outlining brainstorming, we talked last week about the fact that ideas are cheap. That's not to say they're not important, but you should, as you become a writer, start generating ideas pretty quickly. If you have trouble with ideas, which is actually fairly common, if you're developing good style but you don't quite know what to write about, there are several tricks to use to kind of jumpstart you. One is the ubiquitous writing prompt. Writing prompts are okay. I give them on my podcast, Writing Excuses, because they do work for some people. I have never found that I really like writing prompts that much, because I'm searching for good conflict with which to intersect good storytelling. Really, a book, in my opinion, is about an intersection of three things. At the top, you have your character. The side, you have your setting. And over here, you have your plot. And the thing that kind of drives them together with our little super Venn diagram thing here is conflict. Conflict is what's going to drive these stories. You probably heard the little famous adage, the queen died is not a story, but the queen died and then the king died of grief is a story. The reason for that being that the king dying of grief implies more conflict, it implies a question, it implies a relationship. It's a very simple way of putting it, but when I write a book, when I start a book, I am searching for intersections between character and setting that create conflict, or between plot and setting. Plot in this case, I'm talking about your story concept plot. Plot has many definitions. You can define plot as, the stuff that gets you from chapter to chapter, even from paragraph to paragraph. In this definition, it is your one-sentence pitch, okay? Lord of the Rings. This powerful ring was created that could rule the world, and the only person that can destroy it is, an inexperienced furry-footed hobbit who likes to drink tea and doesn't want to walk to the land of death, but has to. Your story hooks, your plot you can kind of describe in one sentence. A better one for that is probably, Frodo traverses the dangerous grounds between the Shire and Mordor. Or, Mistborn. A gang of thieves try to rob the Dark Lord himself. These are your kind of capital P plot, as I sometimes put it. A capital P plot's not going to be enough usually for me. I need an intersection of these things. A gang of thieves to rip off the Dark Lord is fine, but who are these gang of thieves, and where's the inherent conflict in there for them? Why are they doing this? That's where a story starts getting generated for me. And I suggest that's where you start looking. If you're one of those that's a brilliant world builder, of which there will be many in this room, what you need to start doing is start developing characters or plots based around that world building in points of conflict. You generally want to try to put your characters as close to that conflict as possible. One of the biggest rookie mistakes in writing is making an inactive protagonist, okay? This happens because you develop this character and you have them wander into town and see all these problems happening and then want to fix them without giving them a personal attachment to it. Or, you write a teen problem novel, but the teen problem novel is about the girl's friend trying to help her friend get through the problem. Well, that's usually not enough direct personal involvement. It can be if you do it right, but if you do it poorly, it comes off as an outside observer observing the story rather than participating in it. I frequently read new writing where the first chapter is like this. The first chapter involves a main character, a viewpoint protagonist, not actually doing anything, but watching other people do cool things. This is a terrible way to start your book. Even if your book is going to be about, the three-act format, which we'll talk about in a little bit, which is, react, act, being kind of your plot, your movement for your character. It's one of the main ways people build it is at first the main character reacts and then they actually act. This is known as a tangent, kind of the superhero problem. Superman would have nothing to do if bad people didn't force him to do things. and this is a conundrum for writers. A lot of the protagonists will write would be happy, as Frodo was happy, sitting in their house having pleasant afternoons and drinking tea, until the bad guys, who are very active, come in and force them to do something. And this is why we've had this habitual problem in fiction. It's manifest in superheroes a lot, but it's not limited to them, that the villains are more interesting than the heroes. This is because the villains end up acting and the heroes end up reacting. And so your chore as a writer, one of your main chores, is to devise ways that your main protagonist can be proactive even as they are reacting. Okay? This means that you want them to have passions and goals related to the setting, related to other characters, things that are going on that they're working on. Even though maybe the large-scale plot, things are forcing them and forcing their hand and moving them around. Okay? So anyway, that's kind of a tangent, something to keep in mind, that active protagonists are extremely compelling to us. Extremely compelling. We love active protagonists. This is why when you watch a lot of good classic action films, Indiana Jones, the first one's a great example of this, they will often start with a beginning which shows the main character being extraordinarily active before they move into something big, bad has gone wrong, and now you have to react to the situation for a while before you can gain control of it again. We prove how active they are, how they're capable of doing things, and then we kind of take that away from them for a while and watch them struggle back up to it. So, if you are one, getting back to the original supposition here, if you're one that has trouble developing plots, starting off, it's actually pretty easy. Start brainstorming your setting. We'll talk about setting a little bit, probably next week, maybe a little bit today. Start brainstorming your setting. Where's this taking place? What's interesting about it? And start placing characters at the intersection of conflict points. Don't place them observing it. If you have an interesting religion in your world, put your character directly in conflict with it, or as a member of it, directly in conflict with someone else. Inherently, as soon as you start to do that, you will begin to build a story. Because your story, you will start to resolve that in your head or work on it, and suddenly, boom, you have built for yourself a way for your character to go. If that isn't working, another good way to do this is actually read history books. You can find in history lots of great examples of interesting situations. One I usually talk about, is like the marching the elephants over the Alps, right? Hannibal, Alps, elephants. This is a cool concept. You read about this for a while. If you go read about that situation, or maybe the assassination of Sir Thomas of Becket. It wasn't Sir, Saint Thomas of Becket, or things like this. You start reading about some of these cool situations in history, and you can take the core idea of that theme and build another story around it. Maybe yours isn't going to be elephants across the Alps, or even, whatever lizard creatures across the desert. Or it could be, it can be 4 or 5 steps removed. You're going to take your space convoy from this planet to this planet. It's got to pass through a nebula, and you're going to have some of the same hardships. You start kind of with this concept of, here's my conflict. We have to get from here to here, and there's this huge obstacle in the way. Let's look in history and see what kind of complications were involved and see if I can adapt those. Works very well. You will see people doing it all the time. George R. R. Martin wrote an entire book series doing this. He's a medieval historian. He took the War of the Roses. He said, I'm going to do a fantasy version of the War of the Roses, and you have a Game of Thrones. All right? The long-standing tradition of this to get inspiration. It's not cheating or cheap in any way, because what you're doing, if you're doing it right, is you're starting with that as kind of a launch-off point, a springboard, and then you're going to extrapolate. It's kind of like if you've got, in science, you've got this concept of the supersaturated solution, right? And if you drop one little crystal of something in, the whole thing explodes. You're looking for that crystal to start building upon. And that crystal can come from lots of different places.
You're not even the same person that was there before.
So what? There we got a class in there?
2107.
2107. Mm-hmm.
Everyone gets a chair.
Yeah.
And so the professor who was just leaving,
yes,
whoever he was, he said that his class goes to 5:15.
Uh-huh.
No wonder they couldn't schedule us for the auditorium, right?
Well, they wouldn't anyway, because they don't want us to have a large room.
So you want to risk it?
I want to do, since we're all settled in here right now, I want to do this for an hour. Yeah. Then I want to send someone up to check and see if it's occupied, during the next hour.
That's smart.
And if it's not, then next week we will try starting in that classroom and see what happens.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, tell everybody. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. So, one of the other great methods of doing this, of idea generation, is to look to stories you have loved reading and try and boil them down to what about them you really, really loved. Try and get at their core. There is an issue here. You have to do this delicately. For instance, my suggestion to you is if you love Tolkien, to take a few steps further than it is about elves and dwarves that I love. That's probably not what you actually love about Tolkien. And many newer writers make this mistake. It's like, well, it was his setting, so I'm going to write something very similar to his setting. It probably wasn't that. And it's at its heart that really grabbed you. Maybe after years and years of familiarity and playing D&D and reading books like this, that is what you love. And if that is what you love, then it's fine to write that. Don't not write what you love. But for most people, it's going to be the depth of world building, all of the different songs and things he put into it. It might be that, or it could be the seed, completely opposite that I talked about last week, which is the seed of the common man trying to struggle against this enormous thing that some hero should be in instead of a common man. Maybe it's that which really captured you about Tolkien. Whatever it is, if you can boil it down and develop that, and then say, I'm going to take that as my seed to start my story, you can go a completely different direction with it and use that as kind of your soul of your story. This works very well. If you go see a movie and you say, you know what I love this movie because of X, Y, or Z. You know, I love heist novels. I love heist stories. The Great Train Robbery by Michael Crichton is one of my favorites. The movie Sneakers, one of my favorites. And so I, for a long time, had wanted to do a heist story set in the fantasy world. Taking a genre like that and saying, I'm going to do it set in a science fiction or fantasy world. It's a perfect way to do this. Sorry, I've had I'm getting over a cold, so I'm going to have a scratchy throat today. Usually for me, one idea like that is not enough. And so the reason I didn't write Mistborn for many years is I was looking for a second idea to intersect it with. And I suggest that you try and pack more ideas rather than fewer into your book. For Mistborn, when I got what made me want to write it was the intersection of that idea with a separate idea I've been having, which is the world where the Dark Lord won. If you know the heroic monomyth, Joseph Campbell and all this stuff, then you have someone who went on the hero's journey and actually failed, and then became kind of this dark overlord of the world because of his failure. You know, what if Frodo had kept the ring, or what if Voldemort had killed Harry Potter? This sort of thing, intersecting with the heist novel, created Mistborn for me. And so those two things ramming together were part of my story seed. And you can do this. Oh, do we have someone out there?
Yes, they want me.
They want you.
Of course.
Okay. You can do this and build your story from that. So, if you, how many of you haven't started your novel yet? Yeah, a couple of you. So, not very many of you. This is good. This is good. If you haven't started your novel yet, pick something like this and look for a good area of conflict in it and just start writing. Okay? I don't want you to fall too far behind. You really need to just get on this and explore the concept. Now,
question.
Yes.
Okay. So, like, I might be off on this, but
Yeah.
I was just on your diagram.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
The
so,
lovely and completely
Yes.
non-confusing diagram.
yes, it's beautiful.
Uh-huh.
So, like, I heard you say, like, conflict between, like, character and setting, or,
Yeah.
like...
Character and character, or...
Right.
Yeah.
Can you just give me an example of, like, a conflict between plot and setting?
Conflict between plot and setting? Sure. In a lot of ways, Mistborn has this, because what I'm looking for are these kind of friction points, and conflict between them doesn't necessarily mean they're in conflict with each other. When they rub together, they create friction. For me, the idea was I created this world where the Dark Lord had won, and so I then built off the setting, this horrible setting where ash falls from the sky and things like this. And this is an intersection between between plot and setting in a way that creates a conflict in the world, if that makes sense. And so that's what I was looking for. But another way to do it would be to say something along the lines of, so I have to achieve what? I want to become the greatest swordsman in the world, and then devise something about your setting that says, no, you can't do that. Maybe it's a case system. Your setting involves this rigorous case system, and the person belongs to a case that cannot learn to use a sword. You've created conflict between character and setting right then. Does that make sense? And you've created conflict. Your plot thing could be the story of the sword championships. Sword championships plus conflict built around the concept of people who can't compete in the sword championship are allowed to for the first time this year or something like that. You see what I'm saying? You're just trying to build friction points so that you'll end up having a story to tell